A new storm has erupted in the Middle East, and this time, it doesn't seem likely to calm down anytime soon. After months of warnings, veiled threats, and escalating tensions, a point of no return has finally been crossed. Within minutes, alarms blared across entire cities, air defenses scrambled in desperation, and thousands of people were forced to rush to shelters as the skies lit up with flashes, explosions, and deafening noise. This wasn't a scene from a war movie. It was the harshest reality, now threatening to shift the balance of an entire region. This was not an isolated incident, nor just another exchange of fire like so many that have defined the conflict between these two historical enemies. What occurred was a direct strike. No intermediaries, no formal warnings, and consequences that are already being felt far beyond the conflict's borders. What unfolded in recent hours could mark the beginning of something much larger, far more dangerous, and perhaps irreversible. This isn't merely a military strike, it's a statement, an open challenge to the world order, and a thinly veiled warning to other global powers. According to the first confirmed reports, Iran launched a massive offensive against Israel using long-range ballistic missiles. The scale of the attack was such that emergency sirens went off across central Israel, including Tel Aviv. The missiles didn't come from third-party countries or affiliated groups. They were launched directly from Iranian soil. This marks a fundamental shift in how this conflict is being waged. There are no smoke screens or covert operations anymore. This is direct fire, nation to nation. In the midst of the chaos, civilians had only seconds to react. Alerts were issued in record time, and authorities immediately ordered people to seek shelter. Although the lockdown order was later lifted, panic had already gripped the population. Some missiles were intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system, but not all. Several reached populated areas, destroying buildings and injuring dozens. Preliminary reports indicate over 40 people wounded, some critically. Israel's response was swift. Just minutes after the initial attack, it mobilized its air force. At least 40 fighter jets were deployed, flying through Iraqi airspace en route to strategic targets inside Iran. The response was not symbolic. Israeli authorities claimed that the military installations hit included air bases from which the missiles were launched, and that a significant portion of Iran's arsenal was destroyed before it could be reused. Despite the defensive measures, Iran's strike was interpreted as a blatant violation of Israeli airspace and a direct threat to the safety of its citizens. Authorities in Tel Aviv labeled it an act of war and publicly declared they would respond with all necessary force. The defense minister didn't hesitate to state that Iran had crossed every imaginable line and such aggression would not be tolerated. According to him, retaliation will not be a one-time action, but part of a sustained military operation. Meanwhile, the conflict has started to spill beyond the borders of the two nations. The US government confirmed that, in coordination with its allies, it helped intercept some of the missiles aimed at Israeli territory. This implies direct involvement of the US military, dramatically raising the risk of a broader escalation with global repercussions. From a bomb shelter in Tel Aviv, a journalist broadcasting live described the moment the alarms went off. According to his testimony, people's phones all started ringing simultaneously, warning of imminent impact. In the reporter's words, "It was a moment of absolute terror. This city has faced many threats, but this is different. This feels like a real war." Iranian authorities, for their part, have not backed down in the slightest. In a statement released through their UN delegation, they claimed that Israeli attacks on their territory were a direct violation of international law. They reported numerous civilian casualties, stating that the aggression had left dozens dead and hundreds wounded, most of them far from any military zone. Furthermore, Iran insists that it did not act without cause. According to their officials, the offensive was a response to years of covert operations, targeted assassinations of scientists and commanders, and repeated violations of their sovereignty. They argue their actions are justified and that this will not end with a single act of retaliation. In a chilling declaration, a high-ranking member of Iran's regime said, "This is just the beginning. Our punishment will be long and painful. There is not a single corner in Israel that can be considered safe." As if all this weren't enough, the collateral effects are already being felt in global markets. The immediate reaction was a sharp rise in oil prices. Just hours after Israel's airstrikes on Iranian military facilities, crude oil prices jumped more than 10%, marking one of the steepest increases since the war in Ukraine began. This sudden surge is partly driven by fears that the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global oil transport, could be blocked or compromised if the conflict continues. International analysts are now speaking speaking of a catastrophic scenario in which oil prices could soar to levels unseen in recent years. Even the world's leading banks have started issuing warnings. According to JP Morgan projections, if tensions persist and the flow of oil is disrupted, we could see crude reaching $120 per barrel within weeks. And while markets tremble, world leaders are desperately trying to contain the situation. Urgent calls between presidents and prime ministers have intensified. From the United Kingdom, the prime minister publicly expressed his deep concern over the course of events. He affirmed that his country remains committed to diplomatic efforts, but warned that patience has its limits, and the international community cannot remain indifferent in the face of this escalation. The tension, however, refuses to ease. Air defenses remain active, the skies are under constant surveillance, radars are unrelenting, and in both Iran and Israel, civilians know this is far from over. No one dares to predict with certainty what the next move will be. But one thing is clear, the whole world is watching. While the smoke from the attacks has yet to clear and defense systems remain on high alert, the political consequences are already beginning to unfold in the corridors of global power. In Brussels, Berlin, Ankara, Moscow, and Beijing, world leaders are meeting with their security teams, analyzing the minute-by-minute developments of this new conflict. Foreign ministries have activated emergency protocols, and diplomats have been instructed to prepare immediate responses for any unforeseen outcome. The concern is not just about the missiles, nor even about the casualties. It's about the very real possibility that this event could be the spark for a large-scale regional war involving multiple fronts and actors. Because this isn't merely a clash between two nations. This is a conflict with multiple layers: religious, historical, geopolitical, economic, and military. A scenario where every decision could push the world one step closer to the brink. Social media, meanwhile, has exploded. Videos recorded by civilians capture the exact moment missiles streak across the night sky. Explosions erupt in residential areas, and panic grips the streets. Hashtags like #Israel under attack, #Iran strikes back, and #World War III have trended globally within hours. On TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter, live broadcasts from bomb shelters are multiplying, while news outlets around the world update their front pages every 5 minutes. On the military front, unusual movements are taking place. The United States has deployed naval units to the Persian Gulf, and CENTCOM has placed its bases in the region on high alert. The United Kingdom has sent reinforcements to its positions in Cyprus and announced that it is monitoring the situation using all available resources. Even traditionally neutral nations like Switzerland, Norway, and Austria have issued statements condemning the violence and calling for an immediate ceasefire. But the war machine is already in motion. Israel has called an emergency session of its security cabinet. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly declared that his country will not only respond with force, but will escalate its response if the attacks continue. In a visibly tense speech, he stated that the right to self-defense is non-negotiable, and that he will not allow Israeli territory to become a passive target. His words were clear: those who attack us must be prepared to face all the consequences. On the other side, Iran has announced it will launch a second phase of retaliatory measures. Discussions have begun regarding the activation of allied militias in countries such as Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Afghanistan. There are growing concerns that groups like Hezbollah or the Popular Mobilization Forces could initiate parallel attacks, effectively opening new fronts that would overwhelm Israel's defensive capabilities. If you found this video informative and it helped you better understand what's really happening in the Middle East, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. We're tracking every detail, every move, every statement, because in a world where misinformation is everywhere, staying well informed has never been more important.